Hello, everybody. Welcome back. I'm very excited to have my next guest on the show. Now, I talk to a lot of first responders, a lot of law enforcement, but it's not often that I get an active duty, somebody who's doing the job right now on the show. And Jason Lewis has done it for a very long time, over 2 decades. He's here on the podcast right now. Thank you, sir. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Patrick. I'm super honored. I am a legitimate subscriber of your podcast. I truly do listen to it, and I love it. And to be here talking to you is an honor.
I appreciate it, sir. I love like we were talking a little bit before. I love putting good content out there, and I started the show like I told you, Jason, several years ago, and I talk about law enforcement and criminal justice topics because that's the premise of the show. But in the last handful of years, I kind of wanted to pivot and talk about the more positive and kind of highlight some positive that law enforcement and first responders are doing, because I don't have to tell you, man, you're doing the job. And I'm very grateful for you, Jason. Thank you for doing a very difficult job. I appreciate you and all the other brave men and women who do it. But yeah, I appreciate it, brother. So for people who don't know who Jason Lewis is, I just gave a little intro of you. Can you tell us a little bit more about your background, sir? Why did you get into law enforcement? What made you want to serve?
I got into law enforcement when I was younger, 16 years old. I got into the Explorer program.
Yeah.
I didn't really have much going on in my life at that time. And my mom had found a newspaper clipping, gave me a newspaper clipping that talked about this program called the Explorers. And I joined it, and it pretty much just took over my life. It gave me a sense of direction. I fell in love with law enforcement. And shortly out of high school, I was in the academy.
Wow. You said newspaper clippings. I'm thinking for all the young people out there listening to that, we actually had newspapers back in the day.
Yeah, that's the 90s. That's the 90s right there. So I went to the academy in 1999. And then right after that, I went into custody. I spent a couple years in custody, went out to patrol. And, ever since then, I've done a variety of assignments, investigations, bailiff in the courts, directed enforcement. I was the in-service training supervisor for our regional training center. So most of my career, though, has been based in use of force. Use of force is my passion. It's what I love, and that's where I focused everything for the most part.
Yeah, we could talk a little bit about use of force. Hot topic these days. It has been for many years, and rightfully so. It's very important to law enforcement. But what was your favorite assignment, or what is your favorite assignment, Jason, you've done over the years?
I would say in-service training supervisor. I really loved that job. Had a lot of influence over where our training went for not only our agency, but all the other agencies that come to our training center. And I had a great team that worked for me, and we had a lot of fun, and we got a lot accomplished. And I was sad to leave, but we can only spend so much time in those assignments, and then we have to go back to patrol. So that's where I'm at now. I'm a patrol sergeant, and honestly, I love that too. Yeah, man, it's a fun job. You get to go to whatever calls you want, but you don't have to do the paperwork.
That's a sergeant. Yeah, you don't have to do that. You'd be like, hey, boot, or a rookie, do this.
So I don't know. I love it all. It's all been fun. It's all been challenging. And I'm still having just as much fun today.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the best time I ever had, brother, was you said patrol. The best time I ever had was being just a patrol officer.
Yeah.
You go in, you do your job, you have your team, you have your crew, your camaraderie, all that stuff, and then you go home.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then
it's great if you have a great team.
Yeah. Oh, exactly. That's the key. That's the key. I don't have to tell you and the listeners. That's the key. If you have a great team, but there always seems that one or two cops that are always, oh, Jesus. No, just stay away from my scene. Don't come.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm lucky now. The group I have now is great. I mean, it's just a great time. It's good.
Yeah, it is. Well, I'm glad to hear that, because as you know, Jason, and there's a lot of negativity surrounding the profession these days.
Sure.
Not from inside per se, but I'm talking about outside, social media, politicians. I mean, you're doing it right now, brother. I mean, what's the mood within law enforcement in your little neck of the woods right now? I don't know, it's a tough job, obviously, it's an understatement, but what's the mood like overall?
Yeah, the mood is it's obviously it's different than it was
Mhm.
when I first came in. When I first came in, it was a lot about proactive policing and pushing hard and that kind of thing. And now they're definitely much more reserved about how proactive they are.
Mhm.
But I am fortunate. We work in a great community. Our community is supportive of law enforcement. They understand it's a tough job, and so we get a lot of support. I mean, I still, people wave at me. Yesterday I walked into a gelato shop and they refused to accept my money, and I had to force it on them in the tip jar. It's so we're lucky. I live in a very supportive community.
That's the key, or one of the keys, brother. I mean, if you have a supportive, community, I mean, that is huge. I was blessed too, and the agencies I worked with, the overall, I mean, you're never going to please everybody, that,
Right.
but if you have overall support of the community, it makes it a little bit easier with all the other stuff going on in the
Absolutely.
world. I mean, where do you see, I know this is a broad question, where do you see law enforcement, going into the future, brother? I mean, there's, calls for abolish the police. I mean, you've heard it. I mean, where do you see, again, it's a broad question, but I just want your take. I mean, how do you see us evolving as we go forward?
I think it depends on what kind of change we're willing to
Sure.
accept, because whether we like it or not, law enforcement has changed.
Mhm.
I live in California, so the amount of laws that have been put in place trying to regulate law enforcement is extensive. And with the proliferation of video cameras being out there, and almost any scene you're being recorded, whether it's by surveillance footage, by somebody's cell phone camera, obviously by our own body cameras. So if we don't adapt to that and change a lot of what we're doing and prepare our officers for all of those changes,
Mhm.
if we just ignore them, ignore the new laws, or we don't really train our people in them, or don't pay attention to case law, which we've done traditionally, not pay attention to case law, then we're going to set ourselves up for failure, and it's going to be a much harder road. So I think it depends on our willingness to accept the change.
Yeah.
And to be fair to our newer officers, I think they are accepting the change. It's a lot of us who have been around longer that are having a tougher time with it.
Absolutely. I mean, you mentioned the proliferation of technology. I think it's good that we have it. I mean, I know some people don't like it, but their body cams are here to stay and all this other stuff. But I think sometimes, you correct me if I'm wrong, Jason, there might be a tendency of people not to act when they should act. I'm talking about officers act when they should act because they're so afraid of making a mistake and there's somebody with a camera,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. So you have a hesitation to act, to use force when you actually do need to use force, and then the situation blows up into something bigger that it didn't have to be if you had just used a minimal amount of force
Yeah.
early on. So that's certainly one of the issues, and a lot of that comes from they're unsure of themselves, not just in
Sure.
use of force, but search and seizure or oddball, arrest situations that come up, and they're unsure of themselves. Right.
Yeah.
You think about when did you go through the academy? You went through in the
Oh,
late 90s,
yeah, probably mid 90s.
mid
Yeah.
90s.
Yeah. Early
So
90s.
think of all the case law that has come out since you went through the
Mhm.
academy. You couldn't even count the number of cases come out every week. I
Yeah.
mean, there are new cases in your area all the time. But how much training did you receive in those cases? Virtually nothing.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Maybe if it was something that came from the Supreme Court, you might have got a training bulletin on it or something like that. But we just can't do that anymore. The more we ignore that, even though you didn't get training in all those case laws, you're responsible for every single one of
Well,
them.
yeah, it's vicarious liability and
Yeah.
and all that
Yeah.
stuff, and you're assumed to know. And
Right.
you're right. I mean, everything is changes with
Right.
time, and especially use of force. I remember, well, Graham v. Connor is still the standard, right?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
And you think about, so their hesitancy comes from, now you have somebody out with a video camera, and if they get this wrong, they could be in a viral situation that they didn't want to be in, and they were just unprepared for it. So A supervisor I used to have said, when cops don't know what to do, they do nothing. And that's
Yeah.
very true. So
Yeah.
when they're unsure of themselves, they're going to do nothing. So that's on us as the generation that's moved into the leadership position now. If we're
Mhm.
not preparing them for today's challenges, not yesterday's challenges, we are setting them up for that hesitation.
Yeah. And I think a lot of it too is, you correct me if I'm wrong, Jason, for, and it's easy for me. I'm an outsider now. I mean, I'm retired, but we need to change as a culture, within organizations. I mean, some agencies are running good and they're adapting with the times, but I think there's a lot of agencies out there that are hesitant to say, all right, we need to change. You know what I mean? And then they're just stuck in that mentality of, well, this is the way we've always done it. We're going to be hesitant, or we're going to push back on some of the change that's coming down the pike.
Yeah, the thing is, the way I see it is, most of us got into this profession because we're idealists. We want to help our community, and we believe that proactive policing is the way to do that. And a lot of what's happening now is pushing back against our proactive policing. And so for the older generation, who are the ones that are in charge,
Absolutely.
that's a hard thing to accept, that maybe that's not the best approach. Do studies really show that proactive policing reduces crime? Obviously, that's a controversial
Yeah.
question, and everybody has their own opinion, but there's definitely a certain group that is opposed to the change.
Yeah.
The difference is they're not the ones out in the street that
Absolutely.
actually face the consequences
Absolutely.
for bad decisions that are made, right? So if you can be rah, old school policing, push things to the limit, but if you're not the one out there in the street actually facing the consequences of what happens, I think you really need to step back and look, would you be willing to go out there on the street today, right now, and do that same stuff that you did in the 90s?
Well, they couldn't do it,
Yeah.
or they don't want to do it. They don't have to do it. But, going back to liability, I mean, I agree with you 100%, but what some of these senior executives don't realize, that it all comes back to them.
Right.
If you have a cop out there that's hesitant or for whatever reason, or makes a bad decision, they're going to be, the whole agency, the whole municipality could be on the hook for bad decisions. So my point is, you have to have a vested interest. You have to say, look, I need to adapt, or should adapt with the changes. And I might not like it, but this is the reality we live in.
That's right. And even when you do accept that, because there are a lot of agencies that are evolving and doing an amazing job, but even that, we have a lot of disagreement about what does that evolution look like.
Sure.
And so we need to come out. We need to have conversations with each other. We need to have more open dialogue, and be willing to disagree. And I think that's the only way that we come to a resolution on what the path forward is.
Absolutely. Well said. Now, as far as retention, Jason, goes, I mean, retention, recruiting, I don't have to tell you, I don't know how it is in your particular jurisdiction, but all around the country, agencies are suffering, retention issues. I'm here in Arizona. I have friends here in different departments here. I mean, they're down hundreds of cops in some instances. What can we do, or what do you think, agencies could do to not only recruit, top talent, but retain them?
Yeah, so that's a great. It's funny because a couple weeks ago I had this conversation with my shift during briefing, and I just wanted to hear from them what their thoughts were. And I have this conversation with people on LinkedIn a lot too, because it fascinates me. Because it's not just about, a lot of agencies are focused on recruitment and why they can't get high numbers for recruitment, but a lot of them are kind of forgetting about retaining the ones that they have.
Exactly.
They brought up the people I've talked to have brought up some really interesting points. Some of them go around, they don't feel like they have community support. And a lot of that comes from watching the news.
Sure.
That's where they're hearing it from. Some of them do live in communities, obviously, where the support just is not there.
Yeah.
But other ones, they bring up poor leadership.
That's one I hear a lot too. So
they have seen their leadership maybe placate to a message that they don't agree with, or They've seen leadership fold where officers have come under scrutiny and the officer has been left to his own devices, on his own. So that's been an issue. Some other interesting ones that have been brought up to me were, they offer recruitment bonuses to new people that come in, but there's nothing offered to the people that have stayed for 15,
Exactly.
15, 20 years,
Yeah.
So they feel a bit, I guess, I don't know if neglected would be the right word, but
Well, I think
like,
it is, I mean, it's neglect. I mean, well, maybe you're right, but hey, throw some cheddar my way.
Yeah. And then there's a frustration just with the system in general. Like, here in California, a lot of crimes don't get prosecuted. If they do get prosecuted, I mean, the number of people we have on probation with no search terms, and their only term is must obey the law. I mean, it's, what is that?
It's just nothing.
So they kind of feel like their mission is lost a little bit, because even if they do put in the effort and the risk, because there is a risk to what they're doing, even if they put that in, the end result isn't worth what they went through.
Do you think that, again, I mean, broad question, do you think it's going to change, or do you think we're in this space for a while?
No, I definitely believe it's going to change. Change is being forced on us, no matter what. We can't survive doing things as.
No, I meant like recruitment. I mean, being low with recruitment and officer or departments, being down, hundreds in some cases, of officers. Do you think that is going to get better, or do you think we're stuck with this, do more with less kind of mentality?
I agree with the philosophy that it's a pendulum, and it swings back and forth. And certainly there's something going on that's much larger than just law enforcement, because everyone's experiencing problems with filling positions. It doesn't matter. You go to a restaurant, you go wherever you go, and it seems like they're having trouble hiring enough people. So there's something happening within our society that's making that an issue. And then, of course, the pendulum's going to swing for law enforcement, back to a position of support, especially as crime keeps rising. I mean, you can't keep going like this, punishing the people that are out there trying to make a difference, and not punishing the people that are out there wreaking havoc on society. So it's going to change. It's just a storm that we have to get through and adapt to it as well.
And I mean, you've probably heard me say this before, Jason. I do believe that the vast majority, no matter where you're at in the world, in the country, the vast majority of people support law enforcement. Maybe I'm just naive, but I do think that, I do believe that. I just don't think they're as vocal as they used to be.
That's my real life experience, right? So being out in the community, that's my real life experience, is that the vast majority of people support us, want us to do the job that we think we need to do. It's only when you turn on the news or that sort of thing where you kind of you hear the negative aspect of it, or the people that are the loudest are the ones you hear. Not the good people that are just trying to live their lives.
Oh, but because it's not news. It's not newsworthy. Right. I tell people sometimes, turn off the news. I mean, you don't want to live in a bubble, but you don't have to watch the news all the time, because it's all negative, and that's their business.
Yeah. And the other thing that reinforces that is the United States is a gigantic country. Mm-hmm. There are millions of police stops happening, contacts happening every single day. But the only videos that are going to get uploaded are the ones that get the clicks, right? Yeah. So the really bad ones. So in a single day, you're going to have 500,000 videos taken of police officers making contacts, and then one is going to get uploaded, but that compounds. And so if you went to YouTube right now and search for, law enforcement taser usage, or
you're going to see millions.
It's all going to be bad stuff, because nobody uploads where nothing happened. Nobody uploads where you de-escalated the situation.
Or you're out there, and you're starting to see a little bit more, but officers are out there like, playing basketball with some kids or something like that. Right. You see a little bit of it, but you're right. It's not new. It's not newsworthy. It's not shocking.
Right.
And I love what you said about, the hundreds of thousands of contacts we're making, or law enforcement, you are making every day. And how many of those result in any type of use of force, a very, very small percentage, but people videotape and they act like, oh, it's happening every day. Cops are out there killing people. And
yeah,
come on.
Yeah. And that's one of the reasons why officers aren't the best at use of force incidents, is because it's actually a very, very rare thing for them to be involved in. If you take their everything that happens in their whole day, being in a use of force incident is a rare event. So
yeah,
they're not necessarily as up to speed on it when it happens as people would expect them to be.
Yeah. And then when you do use of force training, I mean, it's it's the use of force continuum. It's all that stuff, right?
Here
I don't know what you guys use.
Yeah, I mean, here we don't use it. We don't use a continuum. But we have levels of use of force, and then we have to meet certain levels of resistance and threat levels in order to use them.
So it starts with presence, obviously, and then just goes up the whatever chain.
Correct.
Yeah. Now you're the CEO, buddy, of the briefing room.
Yes.
How did you become a cop? Am I saying that?
Copreneur.
Coptrepreneur.
Copreneur.
Because you know this, Jason, because you're doing it. So many of my friends that are cops that are ready to retire and they're relatively young, they're like, I don't know what to do. Go be an entrepreneur or do something on the side when you're still on the job. For me, it was, I like doing the show, obviously, and I like teaching and stuff like that. Maybe that's not necessarily entrepreneurial, but yeah, I mean, you have so much more to offer, not only when you're on the job, maybe towards your retirement, but when you get off, when you're done, when you retire, there's so many different opportunities out there for police officers, and you're doing it.
Yeah.
So what was the catalyst for you, man? What made you go that entrepreneurial route?
Well, I'm not on the verge of retirement. I have no plans to retire.
No. I'm not meaning you. I mean, just in general, people that are, doing the job, want to start something on the side, but a lot of times they're just hesitant. I don't know. People laugh at me.
Yeah. While I was the in-service training supervisor for my agency, we're a relatively decent sized agency, and we have a larger budget than a lot of other agencies. I found that we were fortunate to have those kind of resources, like a video production team that could make training videos and that kind of stuff, where other agencies don't necessarily have that. At the same time, I realized if we're going to get through this period of time as an industry, as law enforcement, we have to come up with some innovative ways to teach our people within our current training budgets, because no one is talking about increasing our budgets, right? Everything is about putting more laws on the police, regulating
more with
law enforcement more. But when I see most of these videos, some are malicious, but the vast majority of bad use of force videos are not. The officer didn't have malicious intent. What they had was poor training.
I was going to say poor training. Yeah.
Yeah, they weren't prepared for it. So we have to come up with innovative ways to prepare officers for the challenges of today within our current budgets. And so that's where the genesis of the briefing room came from. It's allowing agencies to leverage the power of their own supervisors to provide training to their officers every single day during briefing or roll call.
That's awesome. We used to do like 6-minute training at briefings, which was pretty cool.
It is cool, but unfortunately, a lot of supervisors, they already have a lot of work to do.
Sure.
And so preparing that training before shift sometimes can be overwhelming. Sometimes it gets overlooked. Sometimes the supervisor doesn't know what to train in.
Yeah.
Sometimes they don't know how to train their people, so the briefing room makes it easy. Just log in, find a topic, click on it. That's awesome. And with the 90-second video, the supervisor gets a key points worksheet so they can easily facilitate a discussion after the video plays with their shift. And then their guys are out hitting the streets quickly. So that builds. Awesome. Yeah, that training builds, it compounds, because every day they're just getting a little bit of training, and it builds their confidence for today. We cover case laws you'll never hear about. You'd never hear about these case laws anywhere else, because nobody presents that training unless you might send 1 or 2 officers to an 8-hour class somewhere and pay per diem and hotel and travel.
Now it's all out the window. You get it right now.
Right. And then those 2 officers got that training, but the rest don't get it. Well, this is different. This is your whole agency gets training in it immediately as soon as it comes out.
In a wide variety of topics.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's cool. I mean,
Yeah.
when you were talking about use of force, I mean, I heard this a while ago. I want your take really quick, Jason. The reason why, and this wasn't me who said it, but a buddy of mine said he thinks the reason why younger officers, and I'm not trying to pick on younger officers, is younger officers, a lot of them have never, ever within, in their whole life have gotten in any type of physical confrontation. Whereas like, and again, this is my buddy's theory, is like, we're at the same age, we're in our 50s, me and my friend, he said, you and I used to get into fights not together, but, growing up, we were, you get in a fight and stuff like that. And so I don't know what your take is, but he had a theory that a lot of young people have never been exposed to that before.
Mm-hmm.
So now they got a gun in their badge, or they're out there patrolling. And I'm not saying all young people, but some. Now they're maybe in a physical confrontation, and they're like, oh, I've never been in that before. I don't know what you think about that.
I think yes and no. I'm familiar with that theory. I would say in the 20 years I've been asking academy recruits, how many here who have been in a fight, the number definitely decreased over the years of people who raise their hand.
But that doesn't make it bad, though.
But
that doesn't,
the number of them that come into the academy with some form of training, jiu-jitsu training or MMA training, or some other martial art, has increased significantly.
Military, stuff like that.
Yeah. So I would say my real world experience of being out in the field with officers is a lot of the hesitation comes from just being unsure of what they can and can't do. And they don't want to be a viral video. They don't want to make a mistake. They're always on camera, which is something that when we came into law enforcement, we were not always on camera. No. And so there's a lot of pressures that they feel that we didn't feel when we first came into law enforcement.
Absolutely. Now, Jason, in the briefing room, in your training, does it cover like mental health aspects of officers? And I mean, that might be not in depth, but kind of talks about it a little bit.
We cover all topics that deal with law enforcement, including wellness. Yeah. So, wellness is very deep, and the mental health of officers is huge. A solid aspect of that. Just like, the importance of wearing sunscreen is also super important. And so we cover a whole host of different wellness related issues.
And how to wear your sunglasses in California. Your Oakleys,
your aviators.
Well, how do people find you, brother? I mean, you're doing amazing work. How do people find the briefing room? And now, if an agency wants to, if they say this is, because I imagine you're opening up to everybody, right? I mean, so if they want to, get the briefing room software or, training stuff, how do they do that?
Yeah, so the briefing room is a subscription based on-demand service. Okay. And you can find it at thebriefingroom.com. And right now we only sell subscriptions to agencies. So agencies pay depending on the size of the agency. And the cost is very, very low. It's intended to be accessible to any agency. It doesn't matter your size. And so they can find us at thebriefingroom.com. And they can find me on LinkedIn, where I post a whole ton of free training, just at my name, Jason Lewis, Louis.
And everybody, check out Jason Lewis. Follow him on LinkedIn. He's a good guy, obviously, and he's doing great things for our brave men and women. We'll have all the things we talked about, Jason, linked up in the show notes. Brother, I thank you for taking the time to come on the show, share a little bit about yourself, share the wonderful things you're doing, and you're welcome back anytime.
Oh, man. Thank you, Patrick. It's been an honor to be here. And I look forward to coming back as soon as I can.
Yeah. Thank you, brother. Take care.